All right, what does it do, comics fan? My name is Jack, and this is a space I am creating for people who are as passionate as I am about comic books to meet to discuss what they like about comic books, why they like comic books, and what's going on in the general world of comic books. And I figured the best way to introduce myself to you was to kind of give you guys a short explanation of why I love comic books and why I believe that they are the greatest storytelling medium there is. The thing I like most about comic books is that comic books are where the experimentation on what stories get told and how those stories are presented to us happens. When you watch TV or you go to the movies, you're watching something that has to fit neatly within the established frameworks of a product that millions of people will be convinced to buy, like fast food. But comics are fringe, and they know it. And that's why comics can tell stories for the weirdos and the margin walkers and give them stories that feel like something uniquely their own. You know, it's funny as I think about this. I find myself thinking, if you want to sell something to a million people, you paint a face on a rock, or you throw it in a deep fryer. But comics is this special place where you get to find that little audience that would love that story that you're passionate to tell as a creator. And it creates a cool... It's basically the most punk rock place you can be a writer or an artist. As I said already, comic books are the forefront of innovation. They are where the most brand new stories get told. I have this conversation all the time. People don't realize how much of the media they consume came from a book, or in a lot of cases, and increasingly in a lot of cases, a comic book. I won't go into the specifics of naming everything, but suffice to say, I am pretty sure that anybody watching this video has seen a show or a movie based on a comic book. And then there's something else that I love about comic books. I was recently having a conversation about this exact issue with a friend of mine who you will eventually see some of on this channel. In the ways that you can broadly categorize things or people, there are two types of readers. One type of reader likes to read about people and places they have or might go or want to go. And the other type of reader, the category that I myself fall into, enjoys stories that they could never experience in their lifetime. I found science fiction and comic books at a very early age, and I was always a voracious reader, so when I started reading these stories of fantastical places and, magical creatures, it stuck with me. It was something that I wanted to keep experiencing in my life, and I developed a lifelong love of this medium and the characters and tropes within the medium. But while most people's main familiarity with, as far as their consumption of comic books goes, or for people kind of on the outskirts of this, perhaps their awareness of comic books, while that might be for most people superheroes, comics have always been so much more. And in fact, at the beginning of comic books, no one had thought of that idea yet. I say this to present that while I, for the great majority of my life, was a rabid, let's jump past avid. I was a rabid Marvel fan. I prided myself on my vast knowledge of the Marvel Universe. I've kind of grown and I've changed and the world changed. I'm reading very little, basically no Marvel at this point. Most of what I'm reading is from Image and Dark Horse at this point. But that's just me. That's the wonderful thing about this medium. It has so much. Since I've switched to Image Comics, have started reading stories in comic book form that I've always enjoyed outside of my comic book consumption, but have really never had much of an opportunity to consume in comic book form. I'm reading horror comic books. It's something that I've only recently gotten into and have found that I enjoy it more than I thought I would. I'm reading comic books about fantasy worlds, like the Dragonlance and J.R.R. Tolkien books that I read as a child. I'm reading all kinds of things, and they're not just for kids, is the other thing. Most of what I'm reading is pretty adult right now, and yes, that is if you are familiar with the differences between the types of comic books that are produced by the big two, Marvel and DC, and the rest of everybody. That's your Image, your Dark Horse, your Avatar, your Wildstorm, your Boom, your Dynamite. I could go on and on. Shout out to All Caps. I might get some for that, but I don't care. I love me some Cyber Frog. The difference between all the big two and the rest of everybody, for anybody who doesn't immediately know what I'm talking about when I bring this up, is what's called the Comics Code. The Comics Code says you can't, it makes everything G-rated, essentially. Maybe PG-rated is a better description. But it is something that was established long ago in, I want to say, something like the 50s. Maybe slightly earlier than that, in the 40s. But at a point when comic books were still trying to figure out what they were, they had already been labeled as a kids thing. That's for kids. So, because this is a product that is, ostensibly aimed at kids, it has to not be jarring to their little fragile minds. And so Marvel and DC came up with the Comics Code, which is just kind of a self-imposed agreement that says, things can't get too R-rated. And basically the rest of everybody else doesn't adhere, doesn't necessitate that everything that they publish meet that standard. And so they have the ability to present very adult material, get deep on things, and go places that Marvel and DC can't go, and tell stories that they can't. And these are the things that I think make comics the greatest storytelling medium. When you watch a movie, it's great, and reading a book takes effort and time that watching TV doesn't. But you get to bathe in your favorite epic moment from all of your favorite comics for as long or as short as you want. No one can tell you that you're a slow comics reader. Maybe I like to enjoy the art while I'm immersed in an amazing story that I'm enjoying. Anyway, that's my little short introduction to myself and why I love comic books and why I think you should too. But this is a place where we all come to share our ideas and discuss things, and maybe I can find out about awesome stories that I haven't gotten around to from you guys, and vice versa. And maybe we can just, have a little fun being like-minded people and finding each other in this place. So, hey, happy to have you with me. And remember, I'm not Comics Fam. You are the Comics Fam. Peacey-weace.